Muted.
Get you acquainted with IDS and how that works inside of Lending QB. But moreover, give you an overview of the steps and procedures of completing a LE, loan estimate, inside of Lending QB, and why you do the things you do, when you do them. There may be some things that I talk about today that I'm going to refer you to your manager, because there's different things that you may be doing, different workflows. At the end of the session, I will then open up the audience for some questions if there are still any remaining questions, but there is a good possibility that I will hit all of your questions. So let me go ahead. I'm going to begin sharing my screen. And from here on out, we're looking at my screen. I am in your suite. I have a loan file that I've set up here. And I set it up as though I was the loan officer. I have entered my 1003 data. I have registered my loan file. And the registering or locking, one or the other, is a requirement before you do your disclosures. Why? Because it will increase your accuracy. When you register or lock a loan file inside of Lending QB, there are going to be a multitude of things that are going to happen on that file, but most importantly, the product that was selected, the loan program that was selected, will populate the parameters of that loan file or that loan program onto your loan file. That means the interest rate that was selected. That means the term. That means if it's an ARM, the cap, margin, index, floor rate, all of that populates onto the loan file. It also means that what's called a fee service that was created by your administrator is going to be set onto the loan file. So if you intend to overwrite any of the fees, you don't want to do that before you register it, because when you register it, the registration is going to wipe out everything that you've done. So if you do want to customize some fees, you'll want to do that after you've registered. Now, to give you an idea of registering and how that exactly works, I'm going to give you an example. When the PML engine runs, when the loan officer runs the Price My Loan engine, all of the parameters of that loan file are compared and lined up against all of the rules that your administrators built into this fee service. Let me give an example of what one of those rules would be. I'm going to use appraisal. A rule may have, and I'm not saying it was, this is an example. A rule is built that says for any conventional loan with a loan amount between $10 and $417,000, we'll have an appraisal fee populated of $450. Any loan amount, conventional loan amount, between $417,01 and $500,000, that fee will be $475, and so on. So for every basic fee in the system, a rule was built. It may be very complex, it may be very simple, but that way all of the basic fees are set on your loan file. You don't need to be entering those over and over and over and over again. Far more accurate and less data entry. So before you ever do any disclosures, that loan must be registered. And you may be able to look at that and see that right here, registered. Sometimes the loan status will have progressed past the point of registering, and maybe that says right here, processing. Well, another way to check it is to come into the general screen. And you want to also check the general screen before you progress. This is one of the first pages that you're going to double check before you begin completing disclosures. This is step one. So I can come here and make sure there's a date here for registered. While here, I'm also going to check and make sure of this estimated closing date. Now, this is a date that's already filled in its grade. And if any of you have trained with me before, you'll know that I say don't touch on grayed out fields. Why? Because they're system calculated and they're accurate. But there are a handful of these grayed out fields that you can overwrite. Now, this may be one of them, but let me explain what this behavior is and why it is this way. When your loan officer ran the Price My Loan engine, the PML engine, he or she selected a pricing period, 30 days, 45, 60, 90. So what the system is doing for you automatically is taking today's date plus 30, plus 45, plus 60, and it's populating this date automatically. Now, on a refinance, that might be a perfect way of handling that. Let the system calculate that value. It's a date I don't have to enter. However, on a purchase, we have a contract. We know when that date is. So it is an acceptable field to lock and overwrite. And again, if it's a purchase, I can manually enter the closing date per my contract. Or for now, I can leave it at whatever the pricing period is that I've selected. For initial disclosures, for your LE, it really does happen after the LE, but it is worth mentioning, and that is this intent to proceed date. What is this date? What does it mean? How does it work? This date will not autofill, and I've been asked why a number of times. When I have my borrower electronically sign documents when they come back into the system, why doesn't the system put that date in there? The reason why it doesn't is that the regulation stipulates that that intent to proceed can be a verbal. Doesn't mean that your administrators are going to accept verbal. They may only accept written. That is an internal procedure, and you'll need to double check that with your manager. But whomever it is that receives that information, whether it's the signed disclosure or verbal, if that's going to be accepted, that date needs to be entered in here. It's for timing, it's for compliance. So those are the first two things that you're going to look for. The next page that I want you to double check is going to be your agent's page. Because again, if any of you have taken a training class with me, you'll know I say often, enter what you know when you know it. It helps you now, it helps you later. That later is today. Because if you have entered not only the contacts into your database, completely entered the information, but when you apply them to your file here, you've just taken away a lot of your own data entry that you need to do. So let me explain. Right here, for my title company, I need to have a title company entered here. So you guys all know how to do this. This is nothing new. And I'm just going to use First American. I'm just going to select the First American company. And we'll use Carrie here. We'll say Carrie's going to be our title company. Now, I may want to add more. I may have more than I need to add. I may need or know who my appraiser is, and I want to add that in. So again, this has become more and more and more critical to the success of your system. This information is incomplete. Your disclosures are going to be incomplete, and you'll see that as we progress. The next thing I'm likely to do if I'm doing initial disclosures is I'm going to review this 1003. I'm going to make sure that the vast majority of my 1003 is complete. I'm not going to go through that today. You guys all know how to do that. That doesn't change. You should have been doing that with your initial GFEs until that part of the process does not change. Now what's going to change are the fields here. We're going to go through this disclosure TRID and these pages here. How should they be completed? What's the best practice? Here on the lender credits page, lender credits and discounts, when you registered that loan file or locked it, the system populated that current pricing automatically. Now, how you handle that is an internal process, and you need to test out what way you're going to do it. There are two ways. There is this set manually, which is a simplified calculation, and there is calculate from front-end rate lock. You guys have to excuse me a bit. I've got a bad case of laryngitis for the last week and a half. So if I stop periodically to take a sip of water, that's why. All right. So let's go through these two ways because you're going to want to decide internally how you want to handle this. When you set manually, as I said, it's a simplified calculation. Now, my pricing now is a 5/8 rebate or $17.50. On a retail situation, am I going to show that entire amount of credit at the time that I do my initial disclosures? Maybe, maybe not. Likely not, because what if the pricing changes? And it, is now when I lock it, I'm only going to get a half back, and I've lost an eighth, and I haven't even done anything really. So you can come in and enter in whatever your credit amount is, and you can do it in one of two ways. I can say, you know what, I'm going to show a credit of 0.25%, and the system will make that calculation of the total loan amount, let's say, in case it's a government loan. Or I can go in and say, you know what, I know I'm going to give at least $500 credit. Okay? That appears as a general lender credit. So if that's all you're going to do, you're good. You've shown your general lender credit of $500. Now, I can just as easily do that same thing from the calculate from front end rate lock, but I have more options on what I can do here. It's still going to push in that pricing. But here I can do a lot of different things. I can say manually, I want to set that credit manually. And again, $500 general lender credit to be disclosed on my initial disclosure, $500. So I've done the same thing here on this page that I just did on the other. But I can also do a few other things. I can say, you know what, I want to show a credit of all the origination charges that are shown. Well, there's $3,900 in general in origination charges on my borrower responsible closing costs already, and I can only give a credit of $1,750. So generally, for initial disclosures, it doesn't matter to me whether you set manually or calculate, but I think more often than not for the initial disclosures, people want to set this manually and just enter in whatever that credit will be. All right, so that's my general lender credit area. Now, if you're going to itemize, you won't put any lender credit in here. When we get down to the borrower responsible closing cost page, you'll just simply show what will be a lender paid, and it will total up. Your choice. The next page is your non-P&I housing expense, and this is where everything happens. You should be somewhat familiar with these pages by now, and what you'll be doing is either filling out the information on the amounts page, the prepaids tab, and the escrow and impound tab, and then double checking everything on the details tab, or you can go directly to details. Everything that I'm going to show you on the amounts, prepaid, and escrow pay tabs, I can do on details. But let me show you what I mean. So on the amounts, I'm talking about what is the monthly value of each one of these non-P&I expenses. And I can handle them by either putting in a monthly value, or let's say there's going to be flood insurance. I can put a factor in, and the system will calculate it from whatever I instruct it to, and it comes up with the same amount. So factor, dollar amount, your choice. Similarly with property taxes, I can put in what I know that monthly value to be, or I can put in a percentage and have the system calculate it for me. The beauty of this page is that in many areas that we lend, there are many different types of taxes, property taxes, where you may have county, you may have school, winter, summer. You can select all kinds of different taxes and now handle them individually, because we all know that no county agency is going to make it easy on us and have the due dates all on the same day. They're all going to be different, right? We already know that. So I'm just going to handle each one of these individually. What is the monthly value that needs to be calculated into my debt ratio for any of the insurances or taxes? That's it. Prepaid. What is going to be prepaid? Prepaids usually, that's your section 900 of the old HUD. And prepaids were usually going to come into play mostly for your purchases. Because when you do a purchase, you have to prepay the first year's premium for any of your insurances. So all I need to do is make sure that over here, I have 12 months. Now, I've got 12 months here for windstorm and HO6, but I don't have a corresponding amount in those fields. That's okay. It won't make any calculation. Now, the property taxes, I'm only going to deal with the property taxes if my property taxes are due within 30 days of my first payment. Just as the system did before when you put in an estimated closing date or when the system calculates that value, it will automatically calculate the first payment date. Just make sure that these fields are not locked. So if my property taxes are due within 30 days of my first payment date, I may have to do a prepaid on those as well. And let's say that my property taxes were. So I check the box to say, yes, it's going to have a prepaid. And over here, how many months have to be paid? What's the next installment? Am I paying my insurance, or excuse me, my taxes annually? Well, then it would be 12. Do I pay my taxes semi-annually? That would be 6, because I would be paying the next installment for 6 months. And if it's quarterly, it would be 3. That's my prepaids. Escrows and impounds. Does the borrower want an escrow account, an impound account, reserves, whatever you want to call it? These cushions have all been set for you, so you should need to do nothing. You also have these checked as escrowed. If they want them escrowed or impounded, you don't do anything. Say my borrower says, I want to do partial. Well, I can't do this anymore because come January 1, most investors are going to require flood insurance be impounded, period, regardless of loan to value. But if somebody only wanted partials, I can uncheck it and do partial if that's acceptable. Sorry about that. Okay, details. Everything I just did on these 3 tabs, I can do on this one. Your choice. Not a right way, not a wrong way. What works best for you? The insurance. Now, here's what my loan template should be done. I would want my loan templates to have this on purchase loan templates. Payment repeat, and I would set this to annually in month of closing. Okay, because here's why. This is going to be prepaid and impounded, so I have to tell the system when my next installment will be due, right? So I could go through and figure out where I'm supposed to accurately put this information in, or annually in closing month, and the system will do it for me. It will set the next year's installment to be paid in the following year. So after closing, 2017, system did the job for me. And I would do that for any of my and all of my insurances. So again, I would have these in my templates, my loan templates, set to annually in closing month. Now, everything that I did on those 3 tabs I can do right here, provided that it is set to calculator. So I can use a factor or monthly value. It's up to you. If it's going to be prepaid, when I check this box, notice when I uncheck it, it takes my 12 months out and my prepaid amount out. But when I check it, I put in the 12 months that are going to be prepaid, and the system makes the calculation for me. My cushion's already set. So if I say escrows, it's going to calculate the number of months. If it's not going to be impounded, it takes it back to 0. Going to be impounded, it recalculates the value. So I will do the same thing for every insurance type that is required for that file and every property type. Now, when it comes to the disbursement schedule, I cannot do annually and closing months because property taxes doesn't get paid like insurance does. There's a set due date. So I would need to either do annually and enter in the months they're due. So if it's semi-annually in April and November, I put in 6 months in each of those months, and the system will do the rest. So that is my non-P&I. If I have HOA dues, I can add that in here as well. It's like $250 for my HOA dues every month. I don't need to worry about anything else because we don't impound that. We just need to account for the value, the monthly value. On my borrower responsible closing cost page, remember, because this was registered, all of my values should be populating automatically. I do have a very strong recommendation for you. Notice how I have lender inspection fee 0, broker fee 0, underwriting 0. I don't want those there because when I create my closing disclosure, excuse me, when I create my closing disclosure, I don't want a bunch of 0 values there. I don't want my borrower to think in their head, did they forget to put something in here? Is that going to change later? I don't want them thinking that. So for all of your loan templates, you want to have your administrator needs to go in and remove everything. Erase it all. That way, when the loan officer runs the PML engine and the matching is done, where the engine looks for all those corresponding values according to the rules that have been created, it will populate everything that has a value, and all of these zeros won't be here. I don't want these 0 values there at all. I'm just going to take a minute and I'm going to remove them for the time being. So again, I would have somebody go through on your loan templates, not the fee service, but the loan templates, and delete everything, all the way down. You don't want any zeros. So let's go up to the top and talk about this page. Now, when you come in here, this is going to be protected. So when you come in here, you're going to see some of the fees preset for you, and these came from that fee service. They should be correct. What also was done in that fee service, when it was created, all of the APRs indicators were set in the system. All of the fees that should populate to the FHA pages, any DFLP, third-party affiliate, and can shop. Those were all set in that fee service, as well as the paid to. Now I'm going to point something out to you. Over here on the agents page, I entered 2 agents. I entered an appraiser, and I entered a title company. So I want you to notice, my appraiser is already set. So is my title. Now these should have preset too, but I'll show you how you can update that. So the more complete your agent's page is, the more complete your borrower responsible closing cost page is. Now, let's say you go in and you see this lender and it's blank. You don't have to go back to the agent's page. I can update it all right from here. So all I have to do is click on the little headshot guy, go to my contact entry, find the correct one, whether it's the one DBA here or this one here. I'm just going to choose this one since it's top of the list. And notice what it's asking me. Or telling me basically is that this is also going to be updated on the official contact list. Well, heck yeah, kill two birds with one stone. So if I had had that already set on my agents page, so I can very easily set all this information here automatically. Same thing with anything that's been shown to be an appraisal fee and anything that's shown to be a title fee. These should all automatically have updated. But again, it doesn't take but a moment to do this if I have to. Now, the significance of this, especially for my can shop. For my loan estimate, it's not all that critical that I put in the paid to. If I know who they are, absolutely enter them. If credit report, flood provider, if those are going to be the same across all loans, template them in your loan templates and no one has to enter them. But as I mentioned, the most critical are my can shops. Because if my can shops are set, watch what happens when I come over to my settlement service provider list. Save my changes, of course. Look at that. It's all completed. Automatically, I don't have to do anything. So, when you're doing your loan estimate, at the very least, make sure anything that is listed as a can shop has a corresponding payee, or at least somebody that you're using for that quote. Because remember, can shop only means that you're giving a quote from a specific company, but the borrower can shop, and we'll talk about that later. But it doesn't mean that other areas like the lender, I would still default that. Anything I do know, I'd add it in. Again, who am I quoting? Whether I'm quoting insurance, because it's listed as a can shop. So I have to have a corresponding payee. And I'm going to show you what happens. We're going to use this one. What happens when it's incomplete? When I add in a payee and that information is incomplete, well, my disclosure is also incomplete. Now, will that be an issue with anybody who comes to audit me? Quite literally, I don't know. If the name of the entity is there, is that enough, or does it require the full address? I don't know for sure. I'm not a compliance attorney, but what I do know is I don't want to find out. So I'd certainly want my contacts to be 100% complete so that when I do add them and they populate to my settlement service provider list, they're complete. So I'm going to go through and make sure I have every company in here or every contact in here that I need. I'm also going to make sure that my fees are all correct. Again, this came from a fee service. They should be. If I need to add more in, I can by hitting add. What type of fee am I adding? Now, I also have set up where this 442 compliance automatically came in. Well, I know my property is not a new construction. I really don't need it. But is it your company policy to just go ahead and disclose it just in case? Maybe it is. So know whether you should be leaving it there or not. If I do need to change an amount for whatever reason, click on the C, and I can then change the amount. If you're going to be itemizing credits, I'm going to open up my calculator down here first, and you can see as I go through and indicate for things to be seller paid, they're automatically adding up. Now, maybe I'm too far. Maybe my borrower's only going to do $3,500. I'm over by 50 bucks. So I can come into one of my fees and I can split it. How much will be paid? Let's say it's $750. Whoa, in my fat fingers. $700 is going to be paid by the seller. The system will do the math. The remaining $50 is now the borrower's responsibility. And I now have the $3,500 credit maximum that is going to occur. If I'm going to itemize my lender credits, I'm going to do the same thing here. If I need to go back and double check what my lender credit was or is, I've got this. But look what's going to happen. So let's say that I come in and I'm going to show this one here as a credit. I'm not going to even split it. Let's not even do that. Let's say I am going to credit my appraisal fee. Say it's a lender paid. So I got $550 here now as lender paid. And when I look at my lender credits, I have a couple of different credits going on here. I may have doubled up. So I want to be very careful about that and make sure that I don't have two credits. And so far, so good. It looks like that, you know, okay, I'm safe. The one here that I itemized overwrote my general lender credit. So I'm okay. I'm okay. But I'm still going to check that before I go on. The lender details of transaction is always here for your convenience. Once you've dealt with all of your credits, move on. The only other thing you want to consider is your payable. Maybe you've collected for the appraisal at some point in time. I can always update that to be outside of closing, POC. Notice that my date field just opened up. Also notice that all of the other dates are reflecting what? That estimated closing date, which appears on my other page of 1/29. So my closing date is automatically going to default to everything. But here, because I'm saying it's paid outside closing, I can now update that and indicate when I did in fact collect that payment. Okay? Loan terms. For those of you that have been inside the system for quite some time, you'll recognize this. It looks very much like the till. And to some degree, it is. We've repurposed this because even for TRID, we still need to calculate APR. So it's here. But I do want you to check one thing and one thing only before every disclosure, before every redisclosure. Make sure something is not here. Because if a loan officer has come in and put some prepaid information, prepayment information here to show a borrower how they can pay off a loan in a shorter amount of time, if I don't notice that's there and I leave it, guess what? My disclosures are all going to be wrong. So just make sure there's nothing there so my amortization schedule is correct. I'll double check my settlement service provider list, make sure there's nothing here that I don't need. I will also come into my homeowner counseling. Click on that one box, the 10 closest counseling agencies to where my borrower's current address as listed on my 1003 will auto-populate. Now, seller responsible closing costs. This is new, and a seller responsible closing cost should never be confused with a seller paid. Not the same thing. The seller responsible closing cost page is to handle exclusively one of two things. Either by state regulation, a borrower cannot pay a specific fee and you still intend to charge it, you would enter it here on the seller responsible closing cost page. If by customary practice a seller pays for a fee, it can be disclosed here. I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use California as that example. Here in California, it is customary for a seller to pay the owner's title policy. That's customary. So this is something you need to decide internally, because you have two ways you can handle this. One, you go ahead and add it in here on the seller responsible closing cost page, and you show it as a seller responsible fee. But what if? What if that seller changes their mind? Says, maybe the value came in a little lower, and they say, fine, I'll lower the sale price, but I'm no longer going to pay for that owner's title policy. If I hadn't already entered it on my borrower's responsible closing cost page, I'm stuck. Now, it was disclosed, so I'm covered. So it looks like you are handling it exactly the way I would suggest. Disclose it on the borrower responsible closing cost page just in case. And then at closing, it can be moved. Not a big deal. So I've gone through my lender credits. Actually, first I went through my general, made sure that my closing date was good, made sure that my loan was registered or locked, either one. I went to my agent's page. I made sure that all of the contacts, the official contacts that I knew of at this point in time, at this moment in time, is entered. I also made sure that any fee that is listed as a can shop did have somebody listed. Then I went down to my disclosure page. I went through my credits, made sure how those were going to populate and show. I completed my non-P&I housing expense page either by going through all 4 tabs or going directly to the details tab, your choice. I reviewed my borrower responsible closing cost page and made sure that all the costs that I do believe should be charged are here and the amounts are what I expect them to be. I made sure for any can shop item, I have a corresponding payee listed. Itemized any seller closing costs or credits, I should say. I made sure on my loan terms page that there was nothing in the amortization area under this prepayment section. I made sure that my settlement service provider list looks as I expect it to. I populated all the fields to the homeowner counseling organizations just simply by clicking on the button. And then I reviewed my seller responsible closing cost page. If you don't know seller responsible closing cost page at the time the initial LE is disclosed, it's okay. If you know it, you're supposed to disclose it. If you don't know it, you don't know it. It can be added later. Now, adjustments and other credits. Will you go here? Maybe, maybe not. Any credits that I've already accounted for are already here. The $3,500 that I've itemized, it's already here on my details of transaction. If I were to come in here and put that $3,500 here, I have to pull from the details and adjustments first, though. Pull 1003 details. That's going to link this page to your details of transaction. So I'm going to do that first. Enter in my amount. Now I can come over, come on. Needs me to save first. Okay, now I can do it. Okay. If I want that now onto my 1003, now I've got the same credit. I've doubled my credit. So be very careful that you don't do that. But what if you have some other type of credit going on? Let's say a realtor wants to give a credit or is intending to give a credit. Or let's say that it's a new construction and the builder's giving a credit. Let's do that. and that's going from a builder to the borrower. How much? Let's say it's $2,000. I also want that to be included on my details of transaction. And it shows, including my misspelling. So always proofread what you have entered, because it will show. That's what's going to show on your details of transaction. So you can enter at the time of the LE additional credits here if you know of it, if it is appropriate. Okay. I've done all of the various pages. Now I'm going to go and preview this here on my loan estimate. I want to see how this looks. Let's pretend I corrected my misspelling. Now, the loan estimate is not in the LendingQB library of forms. And there were several reasons for this, but one in particular is why we didn't. Because if that loan estimate was a part of the library of forms, a user, anybody, could go in, print, and issue an LE, and it may not, probably won't, be archived. So you have no record of it inside the system. By being required to use the document vendor, you are assured that every disclosure you do is archived, and you have a record. We'll talk about that more. But here, I'm simply going to go through and make sure everything populated correctly. Just as your till used to in the past, if it were an ARM that was registered, all of the caps and other data that is necessary would be populated. You can then review all the other information. If something is incorrect, you have your hyperlinks. Jump back to the page, and then go back and continue with your review. Make sure you don't have anything here that shouldn't, and make sure that the amount of the lender credit that you have here is what you expect. Now, wait a minute. I gave and showed my appraisal fee to be a credit lender paid. It's only giving me the $500. That's because of the way I did my data entry. So if I needed to correct that, I can update that to be anything else that I need. Or I can manually enter that information and update that to the annual, not no, the amount. Now that's all showing, the way I would expect it to. Now the last thing I'm going to show you on this loan estimate before we go in and start drawing a set of disclosures, notice down here, my lender information, if this is the one that I'm using, is incomplete. No NMLS number here, no phone number. My loan officer's information, today, this is my name for today's purposes. This is my NMLS number. This is my state license number. That's all populated. And it's not a broker, so I'd expect that to be blank. But make sure that all of your contacts are up to date and complete. Now, the good news is, if it's incomplete, I can click on Set Manually. That does not eliminate what's already there. I can enter here whatever the required or missing information is, save it, and move on. So I know this disclosure will be correct. I would then go to my excuse me, administrator, my supervisor, whoever has the ability to update contacts, let them know that this contact was incomplete, and they can update it so that going forward, you don't have to continually set manually and enter information. That should already be there for you. Okay? So it's at this point that I am now ready to go down. And right now, you have it in here. One is DocMagic, your old vendor. One is IDS. Later, once you've made the complete switch over and we disable the other, it's just going to say generate documents. But right now, click on the appropriate link. Use your drop-down. What am I doing? Initial disclosures. What type of program is it? Conventional, fixed rate. And I run the audit. And I save everything up until that point. This works so far exactly as your integration did before. No change. So it's running the audit, running the HOPA, TILA, RESPA, FANI. All the state and federal tests are being performed by IDS. The next page will give me my results. These are going to be a little different. Here is the first minor difference. There are 3 levels of warnings here. There is the fatal error, of which I don't have one. If I had a fatal, I wouldn't be able to proceed to the next step. I also have critical. They may or may not be a problem. If you need to know additional information, show details, and it gives you an explanation. Does it need to be addressed or not? I may also see warnings, and I may see these inputs, which may need no action. If you are unsure whether or not you should or can proceed, ask your supervisor. Don't proceed unless you know what that means. Another difference here is this. Click to view additional fields. When you do, it opens up a new window. You are going to be in an IDS window. See, it's opening IDS Docs. Now, there may be client-specific documents, investor-specific documents, and state-specific documents. Know what you need. If there are specific documents that you don't want here, make sure possibly you can have them removed. It's something you will need to discuss with IDS. State-specific, you'll need to know which of these you do need to address. Once you have addressed all of those, if necessary or whatever is necessary, just as you've done before, you go to your next step. Now, this is new behavior, and it's not new behavior because of IDS, it's just system new behavior. If I wanted to just preview these documents without archiving, I just hit create documents. It's going to create these documents. I'm going to be able to view them, but it's not going to create an archive. Now, I know it says there are no packages to order, and we're going to run out of time. We're going to exceed this 30 minutes by about 10 minutes, so I apologize for that, but if you can stay with me for the additional time, that'd be great. Otherwise, you'll miss the whole redisclosure portion. Now, it's gone into the queue. These are the documents that I've requested. And once they are finished, the queue will update and it'll be the history completed. So there are my completed documents. And I can come over here to options. Excuse me, I don't even need to do that. I can just click here on this PDF to open them and preview them. Now, let's say that I've determined that, oops, there's a mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and close this down. I'm going to go back into the area, back into my closing costs. Let's say that's where my mistake was. And I'm going to change the, origination fee. We agreed to a lesser sum, so I'm changing this. That may not or may not be something you ever do, but that's what I'm going to do, just to do a change. And I will then go in and complete the same step. Now, this is the new part. There were a set of disclosures that were drawn. You did not say that you wanted to email them to the borrower, and the system wants you to confirm what's up with that set. Were they provided to the borrower or were they not? In my particular case, they were not. So I'm going to check or click on this option. By doing that, two things will happen. It will not archive and it will allow me to proceed. If I did, in fact, give those disclosures to the borrower, I would indicate so. But I'm going to say I did not provide them, and now I can proceed. And you'll understand the significance of this in just a moment. So the old behavior in the system while this is doing allowed, whether you said you wanted to email these docs to the borrower or not, it still archived them. And then there became the issue of, well, did those ever get sent to the borrower or not? That's why that new behavior was indicated or included in the system. You're telling the system it does not automatically archive, with one caveat, and I'll show you that in a moment. So again, I'm going to do this same thing here. I've updated, I'm good, and I go to the next step. So, first time around, I did not check this box. I just hit Create Docs. So, when I create docs, it does not automatically archive. The next time I run disclosures, it will ask me, did you give that set of disclosures to the borrower or not? If I said, yes, I did give them, it will archive that version. I indicated no, it did not archive it. Now, had I checked this box and then created documents, the system would have assumed I did deliver those documents, because what is the system doing right now? It's completing those documents. It's grabbing the email address that I entered on the borrower's information page, and it's emailing those documents to my borrower and archiving. So don't check that box. You will be required on the next round to tell whether that last version was sent to the borrower or not. If you check the box that you emailed, it will always archive. So that is the difference. That's new system behavior, and that is the difference. Now, once your disclosures are completed, and your newest version will always be the top one, when you want to deliver, just go over to Options and Email. And then you email them out to the borrower. So that is my initial disclosures. Now, this is a new window. I can close that window, but just as before, my documents were already will be saved into my eDocs. Now, you might want to ask your administrators to change the name of the folder from DocMagic. Perhaps it would be better, more generic. Maybe you call that folder disclosures or generated documents, something like that. If you want to rename it to IDS, you can do that too. Your choice. Now, on the general page, here are the two that I did. Notice this one is already set. I emailed it. I select the version that I sent, indicate that's my initial. I do nothing with this first one. I can set the expected return date of this as received, or wait until I actually do in fact receive it and enter that date. But this can be used as your waiting period And rules can be built around this to prevent you from going to closing until the proper waiting period has expired. Now, I also have this new page called Portal, Document Portal, and that's just what we were looking at. So if I wanted to send them out again, they're still here, I can do that. That is the initial disclosure procedure. Redisclosure doesn't really change. Also notice that the dates automatically showed. Document date, when they were ordered, and the due date expected. Now, let's talk about redisclosure. Let's assume a couple of changes. So, let's say that the borrower changed their mind on the interest rate and they opted to go, oh, I don't know, let's go, I don't want to go that far, 4 3/4. I have an APR violation. We already know the system will do that. Now let's also go ahead and say, some fees have changed. Let's say that, oh, I don't know, seller decided not to do a credit here. And let's say that, oh, well, this really should be an even $1,500. I'm doing all kinds of wonky things that you probably wouldn't do, but I want to create some changes. I save that. And I'm also, now I've got a 0 because I initially disclosed 14. I increased it, that's a 0% tolerance, so I can't do that. Let's say the borrower also indicated that they wanted to use their own closing agent. They'll stay with the title at First American, let's say. They don't care about that, but they have a closing agent they want to use. Well, I would go through and update this information by setting the new closing agent. Let's say it was a closing agent, and it was, we're going to say Samantha here. I'm also going to change, there it is, closing agent. Now I've got that updated. And I'm going to indicate did shop. Because this is a canned shop, and I stated did shop, I can now change this to anything I want. And it will not count toward any compliance because it was a fee that I indicated can shop, and the borrower exercised the right and did shop. I can change any of these fees, provided that the borrower, of course, did shop, and I've indicated it so. So now I've got all kinds of changes going on here. When I have been notified by my, and you should all be using, I don't have it enabled in mine, but you should all be using that disclosure pipeline. And when the system detects that redisclosure is noted and needed, you go into that loan file. And the first thing I'm going to do, well, I can do one of two things. I can go to right to change circumstance, or I can go in here to fee audit, because this is kind of cool. Any fees that have changed in my initial disclosure, so I'll set my initial disclosure. It's going to be the same for both of these for right now because I've only done one disclosure. And I've got 14, there's that $100. So anything that is out of compliance, and it's showing me what type, what bucket they belong in. And notice my escrow fee changed to unlimited tolerance because I indicated did shop. See, note isn't there. isn't there, but did shop. So although it's changed, I'm okay. It's unlimited tolerance. I'm all right, even though I did 1,000. It also shows that my prepaid interest, the per diem interest, changed because I changed the interest rate. But that's an unlimited tolerance, so it may or may not be an issue for me. If the fee went into favor of the borrower, that variance here would show in green. So that's something you can use as a tool before you go into your change of circumstance form. What are the appropriate dates? The detailed reason here. Why is this redisclosure necessary? And here I will change and select all of those that I do want included. My origination is a zero tolerance. I've already verified that in the fee audit. So I may have this sitting over on another monitor watching this at the same time. So truly the only change circumstances that I can redisclose on is my per diem, because that's unlimited, and my closing, because the borrower exercised their right to shop. So you will check the boxes next to the fees that you intend to include on the change circumstance and apply them. At this point, once it's applied those changes, the rest of the procedure doesn't really change. I come down to services. I go into and click on the link. What am I doing? Redisclosures now. That doesn't change, hasn't changed. Still set. Run my audit. And insert Jeopardy music here. Keep teasing everybody that I'm going to put that on a recording that I can play. All right, same thing here. Now, when you do a redisclosure, it is not probable, but it is possible that you may need to pay attention to these. There are some states where the loan being locked requires a specific disclosure. And my loan wasn't locked, but if that were the reason for my redisclosure and I was in one of those states that requires it, I want to make sure that I'm going to be getting that appropriate disclosure. So I want to make sure that the information on that disclosure is correct as well. So if there is a state-specific disclosure that requires your attention, just click on the plus sign. And some of this, like this one, this should be defaulted. This should be defaulted so that you don't have to check this each time. So you may want to check some of these out and do a little bit of testing for this. But more often than not, once you have addressed these the first time, you shouldn't need to go into them again unless there is a state specific. So maybe just as a course of habit, you do double check. Same rule applies. Fatal errors, I can't go on to the next step. Criticals, I can. Go on to my next step. Now I can do the same thing I did for my initials. I can preview first. If I want to preview without archiving, I'll check this box, create documents. I trust, however, mine were done correctly, so I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to say email them, and I'm going to create documents. Now all of my compliance values are going to be reset when necessary, and the disclosures are going to be done, completed. There it is, queue. It's in the queue. They're being worked on. As soon as they're done, queue closes down, jumps everything into completed. And they're emailed out to the borrower. So that is using IDS in the system, as well as an overview of the words just escaped me. There, my 0% my 0% tolerance still remains. Remember, I didn't select that on my change of circumstance because it was a 0% tolerance and it was not something I could possibly. So that 0% tolerance is always going to show there, and you want it. You want that indicator. You want that indicator so that when the loan doc goes out to docs or goes and is redisclosed, everybody knows we have an issue on this file and it needs to be addressed when we close. But in my other violations did go away, my APR, because I redisclosed for that. And I have an archive. I can again go into my general page. And again, here's my next redisclosure. And it's already set with the archive that was used. If I have another instance of needing another redisclosure, I'll do something fairly similar to what I did before. I'll simply go into the fee audit. This time, maybe I'm going to compare my initial disclosed, which was at 158, with my last disclosed against what my current values are. My 0% tolerance is still there. That's just with this. We're not going to be talking about closing disclosures, but I want you to understand how that works inside the system. So when I come back here to my lender credits, notice it's already filled in my 10%. And when it comes to funding and working up my funding figures, it's already there. So that's a little bit of jumping ahead of the game, but I wanted you to see how that's all interconnected. So that is how I'm going to complete my initial disclosures. How we will complete my final disclosures. If you haven't already, you do want to do some testing. Doesn't matter what vendor you use. We send the same payload to every single one of our integrated doc vendors. Some of the information that they receive and what they do with it is a little bit different. Just minor nuances. An interest rate is an interest rate is an interest rate. You send an interest rate over, you know where that's going to populate. That's not in question. I'm talking about other items. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about. And I'm talking about things like on the application for the subject property. Will this populate to the 1003, or does this field now populate to the deed of trust or mortgage, and vice versa? Similarly, when I'm doing documents and my AKAs, or excuse me, not AKA, my POA. There's going to be a POA involved. Some will want just the party's name that's signing. So in this case, it would be David C. Testcase. Other vendors want David C. Testcase, comma, as attorney in fact. Test it. Know which way your new vendor will want that populated. That's just kind of a tip. Make sure you're testing this out, as well as just the general population of data. Now, I am going to take everyone off mute. What I would like you to do right now, if you have not already done so, I would like you to mute your phone, mute your mic. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute it, ask your question, and then mute it again. And we'll spend about 5 minutes. And I'm apologizing profusely for going over on your time. I know how precious it is, specifically given the fact that this is a very short month. So, all right. All right, you are all unmuted. If anyone has a question, go ahead and go for it. Go ahead and ask. Okay. If then there are no questions, I do have somebody who is asking a question. Let me see, and they're typing it in. Somebody is asking a question about the archives, and yes, you are correct. My choice of verbiage was not quite correct. Excuse me. When you're ordering your disclosures through services, and when I run this through and I don't check the email disclosure box, it will still archive, but it just shows it as an invalid archive rather than a valid disclosed archive. So it does archive, it is there, but it is invalid. So I guess in my mind, I just don't think of it as being an archive because it will show as an invalid. So thank you for asking that question and creating that clarification. Any other questions? Okay. Well, everyone.